Manly Hall Official is glad to produce, publish and offer a key to physic and occult sciences. In last month's issue we reprinted from an old edition an excerpt from Culpeper's famous Old Family Herbal. This was the first of a series of articles we are going to run each month, reprinted from the rare 17th century books on the sacred sciences, for the benefit of those who cannot obtain these volumes. The following article is taken from Dr. Sibley's Key to Physic and the Occult Sciences. Wisdom is the light of reason, and the bond of peace. It affiliates man with God, and elevates his minor above unworthy pursuits. It is the principal excellence which distinguishes him from brutes, and the chief ornament that dignifies his character. Whatever is founded in wisdom's laws, defies the moldering hand of time, and ranks with immortality. Hence it is that a thirst after knowledge is natural to man, and if the cares and follies of this world could be estranged from his concerns, his desire of information would be inseparable from his existence. Ignorance and superstition may be considered as the curse of God, which chains its votaries to unworthy objects, whilst, on the contrary, wisdom and understanding provide us with wings whereby to soar above the earth, to contemplate the works of creation, to discern the mysteries of divinity, and converse with angels. The beautiful description given by Solomon of his acquirements in wisdom is highly deserving the attention of all men, but particularly of those who profess the science of physic and the cure of souls. I prayed, says Solomon, and understanding was given me. I called upon God, and the spirit of wisdom came to me. All good things came with her, and innumerable riches in her hand. What greater reward could anyone desire? And though the intellectual faculties of all men are not alike strong and apt for occult speculations, yet it is manifest that all persons are capable of deriving great improvements from reading, and that it is not so much they want of natural ability as of industry and application that so many men disgrace the image of the deity, and degrade the venerable professions of divinity, physic and law. It rarely happens that the want of intellect, or natural endowments of the mind dare the rocks on which men split in their professional character. Indocile and unapt indeed must that man be whom education, experience, observations, reading, or inquiry will not set generally right in his progress through life. Yet, without industry and an anxious desire of knowledge and improvement, neither education nor all the advantages of natural ability can save us from the wreck of error or the disgrace of ignorance. Obstinate men, though of the first capacity in the world, are a forlorn hope and often irrecoverably lost, by unadvisedly pursuing the phantom of their own brain, whilst others, enriched by dignity of sense, and qualified by depth of understanding, so form the brightest characters amongst society, surrender up their talents for discernment and inquiry, and content themselves with taking upon trust whatever they see or hear, particularly in the practice of physic, in the law, and in the church. The mischiefs attendant on this general conduct of mankind are great and many, for by thus implicitly subscribing to the vague notions and false doctrines of others, by shutting their eyes against the light of reason and inquiry and refusing to receive the conviction of their own senses, they transfer error from one generation to another until the unlettered multitude, dazzled by the splendid ignorance of the learned few, become disciples to their mistakes and make error and enthusiasm an hereditary disease. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. Hence, then, we see the necessity of consulting our own reason and employing our own understanding in the discrimination of all our temporal and external affairs, and of acting and judging for ourselves on all occasions which immediately regard our health, our happiness, or our life, and under all those afflictions and misfortunes wherewith we struggle in this world, in our passage to a better, to one more glorious and permanent, the ultimate end and reward of all our labors. Our senses, on these occasions, are ever ready to support our endeavors and perform their office, and it is unquestionably the duty of all men to exercise, to improve, and employ them. Yet it is astonishing in general to see how distrustful we are of those very faculties nature has given us for our guide, and how fondly we submit to the opinions of others, whose nerves cannot feel for us, and whose judgment is often founded upon erroneous principle, and sometimes on no principles at all. This, however, is a conduct by no means fitted to the dignity and office assigned to men, who being placed at the head of all God's works upon earth, walking in his image, and exercising dominion over his creatures, is bound to improve that intellect of reason and understanding, whereby he is to govern and direct them, according to the dictates of truth, of justice, and of mercy. For this purpose he ought, like Solomon, to study the occult properties and qualities of all things, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop that springeth out of the wall, with whatever relates to a proper knowledge of himself, and of beasts, and of fowls, and of creeping things, and of fishes, not to worship the sun, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor any of the host of heaven, but to consider, to admire, and to investigate their characters, fixed by the hand of God for signs, for seasons, and for days and years. They, in fact, contain no more than what every man ought to be acquainted with, to the best of his abilities, because they lead to a comprehensive idea of those occult causes and effects which act the most, though they are the least seen, and whereby the human understanding is enlightened and improved, and the mind enriched with those divine precepts, which lead to a manifestation of that first and omnipotent cause, to whose power all second causes are subservient, and operate but as the agents of his will, and under whose provident care and sufferance we see, feel, move, speak and have our being. The 10,000 blessings which result from this study are found in our inquiries after truth, and the mysteries which surround us, of the astonishing sympathy and antipathy betwixt heavenly and earthly substances, of the wonderful harmony and construction of the celestial bodies, of the nature and qualities of our own existence, and the propagation of our species, of the occult properties implanted in all created beings, and the end for which they are and were created. To such inquiries all men are alike competent, and may boast the same pretensions, unless obstinacy, or indolence, are substituted to prevent them. There is certainly implanted in the human mind a power which perceives truth and commands belief in all the occult properties of nature, not by the force of argument nor learning nor science, but by an instantaneous, instinctive and irresistible impulse, derived neither from education nor from habit, but from the peculiar gift of providence, acting independently of our will, whenever these objects are presented, bearing evidence of their reality, even when the pride of our external deportment and our very words affect to deny them. This is an intellectual sensation, which I will venture to affirm, is felt more or less by all mankind, and I know the hearts of all my readers, if not their tongues, will admit the fact. It is therefore evident that the humble category, the classical curate, the regular physician and the village doctor, stand on the same level in this respect. The study of nature's laws, of the occult properties in medicine, and in the frame and temperature of our bodies, is no less simple than important to our welfare, and without knowing these, we know nothing that can place us beyond the sagacity of the brute creation. We can neither foresee danger, nor shun it when it is near. We are subject to misguided treatment and mistake. In our medical applications and advice we receive intuitive signs and tokens of misfortune or advantage without knowing how to benefit by the admonition. In short, without this study, our inquiries are vain, our perceptions are clouded, our views limited, and all our pursuits are vanity, vexation and disappointment. The weakness of our reason, and the avocations arising from the infirmities and necessities of our situations require the most powerful instructions, and the clearest perceptions of heavenly and earthly things, for the preservation of our souls and bodies, and for the illumination of our minds, advantages that can in no wise be more completely obtained than by an intimate acquaintance with the occult sciences, or, in other words, by a contemplation of God and nature. Though God has given us no innate ideas of himself, yet having furnished us with those faculties our minds are endowed with, he hath not left himself without a witness, since we have sense, perception, and reason, and cannot but want a clear proof of him, as long as we carry any thought of ourselves about us. To show, therefore, that we are capable of knowing, that is, being certain that there is a God, and how we may come by this certainty, I think we need go no farther than ourselves, and that undoubted knowledge we have of our own existence. I think it is beyond question that man has a clear perception of his own being. He knows certainly that he exists, and that he is something. In the next place, man knows, by an intuitive certainty, that bare nothing can no more produce any real being than it can be equal to two right angles. If, therefore, we know there is some real being, it is an evident demonstration that from eternity there has been something, since what was not from eternity had a beginning. And what had a beginning must be produced by something else. Next, it is evident that what has its being from another, must also have all that which is in and belongs to its being from another too. All the powers it is must be owing to, and received from the same source. This eternal source of all being must be also the source and original of all power, and so this eternal being must be also the most powerful. Again, man finds in himself perception and knowledge. We are certain then that there is not only some being, but some knowing intelligent being in the world. There was a time when there was no knowing being, or else there has been a knowing being from eternity. If it be said there was a time when that eternal being had no knowledge, I reply that then it is impossible there should have ever been any knowledge, it being as impossible that things wholly void of knowledge and operating blindly and without any perception should produce a knowing being, as it is impossible that a triangle should make itself 3 angles bigger than 2 right ones. Thus, from the consideration of ourselves and what we infallibly find in our own constitutions, Our reason leads us to the knowledge of this certain and evident truth, that there is an eternal, most powerful, and knowing being, which whether anyone will call God, it matters not. The thing is evident, and from this idea, duly considered, will easily be deduced all those other attributes we ought to ascribe to this eternal being. From what has been said, it is plain that we have a more certain knowledge of the existence of a God than of anything our senses have not immediately discovered to us. Nay, I presume I may say, that we more certainly know that there is a God than that there is anything else without us. When I say, we know, mean there is such a knowledge within our reach which we cannot miss, if we will but apply our minds to that, as we do to other me answer, it being then unavoidable for all rational creatures to conclude that something has existed from eternity. Let us next see what kind of thing that must be. There are but two sorts of beings in the world that man knows or conceives, such as are purely material, without sense or perception, and sensible perceiving beings such as we find ourselves to be. These two sorts we shall call cogitative and incogitative beings, which, to our present purpose, are better than material and immaterial. If then there must be something eternal, it is very obvious to reason that it must necessarily be a cogitative being, because it is as impossible to conceive that bare incogitative matter should ever produce a thinking intelligent being as that nothing of itself should produce matter. Let us suppose any parcel of matter eternal, we shall find it in itself unable to produce anything. Let us suppose its parts firmly at rest together. If there were no other being in the world, must it not eternally remain so, a dead inactive lump? Is it possible to conceive that it can add motion to itself or produce anything? Matter then, by its own strength, cannot produce in itself so much as motion. The motion it is must also be from eternity, or else added to matter by some other being more powerful than matter. But let us suppose motion eternal too, yet matter, incogitative matter, and motion, could never produce thought. Knowledge will still be as far beyond the power of nothing to produce. Divide matter into as minute parts as you will, vary its figure and motion as much as you please, it will operate no otherwise upon other bodies of proportionable hulk than it did before this division. The minutest particles of matter knock, repel, and resist one another, just as the greater do, and that is all they can do, so that if we suppose nothing eternal, matter can never begin to be. If we suppose bare matter without motion eternal, thought can never begin to be, for it is impossible to conceive that matter, either with or without motion, could have originally in and from itself, sense, perception, and knowledge, as is evident from hence, that then sense, perception, and knowledge must be a property eternally inseparable from matter, and every particle of it. Since, therefore, whatsoever is the first eternal being must necessarily be cogitative, and whatsoever is first of all things must necessarily contain in it and actually have at least all the perfections that can ever after exist, it necessarily follows that the first eternal being cannot be matter. The Chair of Doom. It was in the summer palace of the emperor where cherry blossoms filled the air, little bridges led across waterways filled with fishes of gold and silver, and little dwarfed fir trees scarce higher than your waist edged the road and parked lawns of the summer garden. In the midst of this beauty was a little pagoda where the emperor used to come and sit, and in it was a glorious chair of carved ebony, its back cut to resemble an ancient tree through which flew ho-ho birds with little eyes of gleaming mother of pearl. The emperor used to love to come here and sit in the midst of his summer garden to laugh and smile with nature, but as the years went by and the step of the emperor grew halt, the cares of state resting heavily upon him, he came less often to his chair in the garden. One who was close to him and beloved of him came to the emperor one day and said, "Sire, you have been sad these many days, but the sun shines in the sky and the garden is in bloom. Come out once more to the pagoda of dreams as you used to do in days gone by." The emperor was silent, for his mind went back over the years beyond recall, and he dreamed of the hours he had spent in his garden of cherry blossoms. Then, leaning on the arm of this one whom he trusted, he went into his garden where he had not walked for many years, and there, with but few to attend him or to break the solitude of his thoughts, he sank as a weary pilgrim into his chair in the garden. For years none had sat there. The chair was dusty and streaked with age, and the glint eyes of the ho-ho birds had fallen out. But the emperor did not care, for in the hours he sat upon it he lived in the long ago, in the days when in youth and carelessness he had lived in his garden of dreams. Still the same chrysanthemums raised their many-colored heads and danced in the sun. Still the golden fishes leaped in the pools, and the white storks with their crimson crests balanced in silent majesty in the watery rills. He heard the same waterfall which had sounded in his ears when he had played his love song in the gardens years before. And the emperor was sad, sad with the remembrance of loves and joys lost forever. So he sat in his chair, moody and silent, while the glorious sun sank down in the endless west, as his own life was fast sinking in the endless west of eternity. And in this way the emperor fell asleep in his garden of cherry blossoms, and there he slept forever. When dawn came they found the spirit gone and the body asleep in the pagoda of dreams. The years went by and another king sat upon the throne, but none would enter the garden, for it was there the emperor had gone to sleep. So a story came down through the ages that told of the chair of endless sleep in the pagoda of golden dreams. It was warned that whoever went into the garden of pleasure would sometime go back again and enter the rest eternal in the garden of their dreams. So the new king never went there for fear that he too would fall asleep in the enchanted chair. He had a mighty wall built around the garden that none might enter, for he had been told by a reader of the stars that he would go to sleep as his father had in this pagoda of dreams. So he issued orders to all the world that none should go into that garden and none should ever speak to him of that garden, for he had vowed in his soul to live forever as a ruler of his people. Thus for 100 years the old chair stood alone in the garden of wild cherry blossoms, and the old king swore a new oath every year to outlive the curse. Now it seems that there came into this land the foot of the white man, coming as it so often did, not to lift but to rob, not to serve but to pillage. One of these white men learned of the pagoda of dreams and the sacred chair that was in it, and one night when all was still climbed over the high old wall to steal this treasure. Passing through the darkness of the night, amid the little arches and bridges and altars of granite, he finally came to rest at the gate of the pagoda of dreams. The hinges were rusty and old, the golden lattice work was tarnished and broken, the lanterns that had lighted the garden were but skeletons of wood from which the gay silks had long since rotted, the little fish no longer played in the stream for it was dried, and their homes were mixed with the sand. The chrysanthemum beds were filled with weeds, and the palms were overgrown with hushes, for none had entered it since the day the emperor had died. The American, with his hand on the hilt of a revolver, broke the lock of the pagoda door and passed in where the pale rays of the moon hut dimly entered through the gaping holes of a decaying roof. There, in the center of an inlaid floor, stood the Chair of Doom. It was a broken thing that had once been the resting place of an emperor, and overgrown with a tangle of weeds and cobwebs where spiders had built their nests in its carvings. The American stood for several seconds viewing this broken chair, dreaming of the fortune it would bring in the Western world when they knew of its secret history. As he stood there in the night, he heard a footfall behind him. Turning, he saw coming towards him an Oriental robed in a wonderful garment of embroidered chrysanthemums and lotus flowers. This figure walked slowly forward with his hands outstretched before him. The American looked fixedly at his face and saw that his eyes were closed. "What can it mean?" he muttered, creeping back into the shadow. The robed man walked up to the battered gate and then slowly round and round the pagoda, in the same measured tread, with eyes closed and hands extended. At last the truth flashed into the mind of the American. The figure was that of the ancient emperor, and he was walking in his sleep. The ideas and thoughts of his life had become so fixed in his mind with the dread of the Chair of Gloom that night after night, when his body was in resistless sleep, an unknown and unenameled force drew him into the garden to the pagoda of dreams amid the scent of the cherry blossoms. Slowly the Oriental entered the pagoda and seated himself, eyes still closed, in the Chair of Doom from which none might rise. As he sat there, the American started in surprise. Across the floor of the pagoda a strange creature was crawling, its hard shell-like claws grating on the stone. He stood as though fascinated and watched a gigantic scorpion, like a small crab or lobster, crept slowly towards the seated figure of the sleeping emperor. With his eyes fixed upon the insect, the American stood as if spellbound as the thing climbed up the robe of the Oriental as he sat sleeping in the chair. The moon glided for a second behind a great wall of clouds that had risen from the valley and hung like a shade around the crest of the distant mountains. When it passed from behind the clouds and shed its cold beams again into the pagoda of dreams, a strange sight was revealed. The emperor lay in the chair where his father had died, and on the ground beside him the crushed body of the scorpion. Over the two stood the American, who gazed in astonishment as the light came on. Seeing the dead insect, he shook the quiet form. The body swayed as he shook it and would have fallen from the chair had he not drawn it back. Then as he looked more closely, he saw on the hack of the dead hand two tiny marks, like a pair of lips, where the kiss of the scorpion had fulfilled the ancient prophecy. "So," murmured the American, "that is the Chair of Doom. Well, I'll leave it forever where it stands in the orchard of cherry blossoms. Twice it has fulfilled its pledge." And slowly he passed out from the pagoda and to where the great wall surrounded all. Suddenly a figure appeared from the darkness. A long, thin, hollow tube was placed to its lips. Then through the night a shaft of tufted steel shot from the mouth of a blowgun. The American turned, swayed for a second, and slowly crumpled up at the foot of the wall, just a few feet from the pagoda. When morning came, they found the emperor asleep in the Chair of Doom, and by the wall the body of a foreigner, in his hack a poisoned dart. A new law was passed in that land, and a great crew was turned into the garden. For many days and nights they labored to destroy a superstition. They tore up the bridges and the shrines, filled the stream beds with dirt, they burned the pagoda, and with it the Chair of Doom. And now another world stands in that garden of dreams, a wonderful building of brick and stone with an elevator running up and down. The busy Pervan East, awakened by the hand of the West, stands where once the cherry blossoms swayed. The legend of the Chair of Doom is nearly forgotten, but hidden away in the records of a mysterious people is the old story of the Pagoda of Golden Dreams and the enchanted Garden of the Emperor. Question and answer. Please name some occult literature that is good for the beginner to study. Answer: The Brother of the Third Degree by Garver, The Dweller on Two Planets by Philos, Miriam of the Mystic Brotherhood by Howard, The Romance of Two Worlds by Barabbas, The Sorrows of Satan and Life Everlasting by Marie Corelli are as good fiction as can be secured on the subject. The writings of Jacob Boehm, Andrew Jackson Davis and Emanuel Swedenborg are excellent from the mystic standpoint. Sibley, Raphael, William Lilly and Nicholas Culpeper are good in astrology. The Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled and The Key to Theosophy by Madame Blavatsky, The Cosmoconception by Max Handel are of the best occult works of modern times. Spencer, Huxley and Plato lead in scientific research and philosophy, while H.G. Wells has written an excellent history of the world. When can we tell that a past debt has been paid? Answer: when we met an unpleasant problem and master it. We never have to pay the same debt twice. If it still bothers us, we have not met it. How can we change our environment? Answer: our environment is created within ourselves, and if we would see harmony, we must build harmony within, for we see all the world through our own eyes, our own failings, likes and dislikes. Why does the Lord's Prayer say, "Lead us not into temptation, else this not a blasphemy"? Answer: this part of the prayer is directed to the lower emotions, asking in the name of the divine that they lead us not into temptation. It is not addressed to God, but to the lower man in the name of God. When should we be guided by our intuitions? Answer: when we have proved by experience that our spiritual natures have unfolded to that degree that they guide us in the way that leads to constructive acts. If we do not purify the bodies and make the glass clean, we can never be sure where inspirations come from. Can we get anything we want by wishing for it? Answer: yes, if we wish to work. Why are we born with so many imperfections? Answer: because when we finished our last visit here, there were many little things and a few great ones that we had not completed. There were many things which we did wrong, and for them we are suffering. We start in this time where we left off before. What is the best way to free oneself from the clutches of a hypnotist? Answer: there is only one possible way, and that is the developing of a positive willpower and making it stronger than that of the operator. Outside aid is only a crutch, and the victory over this enemy of mental freedom is only possible through the divine help of the God in man, the individual consciousness within. How long and how often should one fast and pray for spiritual growth? Answer: next time you decide to do this, take a vacation, roll up your sleeves and go to work to help someone who needs something, and fast in your spare time. In your fasting, let your lower emotions starve for lack of nourishment, and let your prayer be a life lived well 24 hours a day. Is the anthropoid a degenerate human or a highly evolved animal? Answer: neither. He is the result of the inability of a certain percentage of the last life wave to advance to human consciousness. What effect has cremation on the spirit? Answer: cremation about 3 days after death, immediately destroying the body, severs the last tie between the higher organisms and its form, and in that way frees the spiritual bodies to go on with their work. Are earthquakes and the sinking of continents natural causes, or are they effects of the inharmony among those who inhabit them? Answer: they are caused by the inharmonious thoughts of those who inhabit the planet. Emotion is attuned to fire, and fire is the cause of all the changes in the earth. Our thoughts affect our bodies, as we know. We are the cells of the body cosmic, cells with a very bombastic temperament, and we are continually causing aches and pains to our planet. However, all is progression, all is moving and working forward. Can the mind image anything unreal? Answer: it is impossible for a human mind to create or image anything that does not exist somewhere on one of the many planes of nature. Is the power of communication with the astral spirits a sign of development? Answer: not necessarily. Development is a positive step forward, while many become conscious of superphysical things through a retrogression. Crystal gazing, magic mirrors, and all those things are not developments but are degenerations which will destroy us if we continue them. What did Christ mean when he said, "In my Father's house are many mansions"? Answer: one translation of this paragraph says, "In the Father's house are many resting places," and the mansions undoubtedly refer to the different planes of nature where the spiritual consciousness lives and rests in its progression towards perfection. What is the best cure for an inflamed stomach? Answer: fasting, non-irritating diet, and a purifying of the entire system are the only means by which treatment of a permanent nature can be carried on. Is there a healing for sore and aching feet? Answer: it is amazing what a marked connection there is between a disturbed stomach and sore feet, but if people will keep their general system in good order, much foot trouble can be eliminated. What are the real dangers of psychic development? Answer: the first great danger is negative development, which results in mediumship and obsession. The second great danger is seeking to unfold spiritual powers before the body has been properly purified to sustain the strain. What is the meaning of the word occult, and how is it to be used in connection with spiritual sciences? Answer: the word occult means hidden. An occultist is one who, through the powers of reason, is trying to lift the veil of allegory from science and religion and find the germ of truth and unity concealed in their diverse, complex, and literal explanations and teachings. The occultist is the eternal seeker, seeking eternal truths. Who is a mystic, and how does he differ from the occultist? Answer: the mystic is one who is seeking to gain the same truth and lift the same veil by developing the heart side of his nature, and to gain by intuition what the occultist searches for by reason. It is the union of these two paths, the mystic and the occult, that gives the seeker the balance that is necessary before the higher initiations are possible. When action of the proper kind is added to this and the student applies his theoretical knowledge, then the eternal triangle is perfected and balanced in man. What is the true object of all the wisdom teachings? Answer: their purpose is to show man his true position in the great plan of creation. They explain to the student the responsibilities of life, and, through the knowledge that they give him, prepare him for the great work that awaits all when their days of schooling are over. How should we regard a religion? Answer: or religion is a phase of truth attuned to the states of consciousness of them who are evolving through it. It is the doctrine, part of a still greater doctrine, to which we are drawn by the faculties we have developed and the spiritual sight we have unfolded within ourselves. It is a changeable point. As we grow in experience and understanding, our religion and religious concepts should broaden with us. Every living being changes, or should change in some way, his religion with each experience and unfoldment which daily life brings. If he does not do this, he is standing still. When we are inclined to look down upon creeds or religions that seem primitive to us, we should remember that they are all steps in a great plan that must be passed through before the planner can be revealed. When we have passed through and reached a more elevated ideal, our broadened, spiritual intellect should help us to realize the need of all of the other steps, and the fact that a doctrine exists at all on this plane of nature is proof certain that it is helping someone who would fall without the protection and inspiration that it gives, for nature supports nothing any great length of time that is not of use in the plan. What is a creed? Answer: creeds are steps in the unfoldment of religious truth which have on this plane of nature drawn around them forms which we call denominations. Creeds are incarnations of spiritual truth, functioning in ever better vehicles furnished by the consciousness of those souls who are evolving through them. Which religions are occult? Answer: all religions have a hidden or esoteric side. The same may be said of all the divisions of a religion. The esoteric doctrine we see in a religion depends upon the esoteric eyes we have developed in our own spiritual natures. They who look through the eyes of form can see only form, and in religion only the history of people now dead and countries now unknown, while to them who have evolved the spiritual sight, the life behind the form, the truth behind the allegory, is visible. All religions are steps in the unfoldment of one truth, and they only clash when their spiritual ideals are crystallized into material forms. What is a miracle? Answer: a miracle is an effect, the cause of which is unknown. The cause, however, must be as great as the effect it produces. If the student wants a miracle to happen to him, he must set in motion causes great enough to produce the desired effect. Our universe is governed by law and order in spite of what many persons believe. Who is God? Answer: God, as he is now generally understood, man, and the universe are various stages in the concrete manifestation of the Absolute. The God we know is the individualized part of this unknowable one, who through the unfolding of consciousness has become the ruling spiritual intelligence of a solar system. Man is eternally making adjustments of bodies within to planes of consciousness without, and God is relatively perfect on a plane of consciousness where man as yet has not evolved vehicles of expression. Man, however, contains within himself, in germinal essence, powers which will give him later, when evolved, the consciousness he now worships in the Logos or God. Copyright 2025 by Manly Hall Official. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share, to help the channel growth, new videos on a daily basis.